Hey guys, give it a couple seconds so people can get in. That's a couple seconds. So my name's Dustin Wiley, Viking Financial Group. If you've never seen me before or met me, if you have, you know exactly how this is going to go. It's not going to be very smooth. We're just normal human beings that are just good at our craft. We're just going to talk to you, give you as much information as possible. So a little bit of background on me. I started in financial services about 4 years ago. So I was at the gym, and there was this guy. He pulled up in a G Wagon. He had a big, fancy, flashy watch. And he got on the phone, and I was like, man, this guy's rich. He's tall. He's dark. Like, he's fit. I was like, this guy's got it made. He took a phone call, and he was talking to his client. He said, hey, market sentiment, the best we can do is we can get you a 1% return CD right now. I was like, I don't know much about finance, but that doesn't sound right. So, quick Google search, found out that CDs at that time were like 3.95%. So basically, this guy was putting people into a 4% CD, pocketing 3% as a management fee. And I didn't know anything about finance, but I knew that what I was doing was not paying the bills. This guy had a bunch of money and he was doing it the wrong way. So I thought there's got to be a place in the industry for people that are going to do the right thing. So I just kind of went in head first, quit my job, took out loans, learned everything I could learn about finance, got partnered up with the right people who taught me about this estate planning, private equity, investments, life insurance, all that good stuff. So that's me. And that's kind of my background. I have Dina here. She's from Integrity Estate Planning. She's my partner on the estate planning side. She sets up all the trust and wills for everybody that I have in my book of business. And every single time they do finish business, they're like, Dina is a gem, love her to death. Don't know where you found her, but don't lose her. So I'll just let her introduce herself.
Hello, everybody. Dina Atkinson. I, at this point, can proudly say I have been doing trust for a quarter of a century. Started in the early 2000s, if you can believe it. I had a partner, but we were putting on 32 workshops a week, and we had four attorneys each giving four presentation. I mean, I'm sorry, giving eight presentations, and so we grew in 2, 3 years to 4 or 5 thousand clients. And the company's been through different periods of, bigger staff, smaller staff, but we have been around the entire time providing these services. So our motto has kind of grown into, we grow through referrals. So we just really, our goal is to provide a valued service for the client, walk them through it, make sure we maximize the value for the client, but also simplify the process and make it super simple and clear. And you spread the word. That's our motto. And we have grown into not just where clients are referring business to us, financial advisors, insurance agents, so forth and so on. And again, our goal is to make the financial advisor, the insurance agent look good. And then again, that just grows like wildfire. So that's been our motto. And we're only around today still for that one reason. A good reputation speaks for itself. And I cherish my relationship with Dustin. I like the way he works, an ethical guy. You got to work with people that are talented and ethical both, and that's what Dustin is. So he's a pleasure to work with.
I'm just going to scratch each other's back to the end of eternity. Okay, so we'll just jump into the meat and potatoes. So, estate planning, most people don't even know what estate planning is. You hear that, you're just like, I have no clue. So, what is it? It involves creating a roadmap for your asset distribution after you die, basically, ensuring that your wishes are respected. So, someone dies in a movie, you normally hear last will and testament. You see an old movie back in the cowboy days, the lawyer shows up, he reads last will and testament, ABC goes here, ABCD goes there. That's basically what estate planning is in a nutshell, but you can get a lot more widespread. You can go revocable living trust, irrevocable trust. You can do a will, a pour over will, healthcare directives, all sorts of different things. So estate planning is not just the word estate planning. Is there anything else on that that you kind of see that I missed on what is estate planning?
Well, it's not a one size fits all answer, so it's very individual. Estate planning not only has to do with the money or the finances that the estate holds, it's the personality of the family as well. Are there responsible people? Are there people you trust or they're not? I mean, so there's so many elements that have to go into estate planning, not just money, but so many other emotions and personalities that have to be put into the equation. So, and one can't overthink what tomorrow is going to bring. So you really do need to strategize based upon how your life is today, and you can make those changes down the road. As I do see people trying to over guess what the future is going to bring, and one doesn't know. So in essence, you really just plan as your life is today, knowing you can make those changes, down the road. No one built Rome in a day, right?
I'm glad you said that because the next why it matters is it helps avoid family disputes. So you'll see this pretty quickly in the next slide, but family disputes to me drain most estate planning ordeals. I mean, I think the statistic is 99% of inheritances are spent down in 6 months, which to me is crazy, but I know people that have gotten inheritances of $10,000 or $500,000 and it's gone. It is immediately gone super quick. So you can avoid the family disputes, reduce your taxes in some cases, and ensure that your assets are managed accordingly to your wishes. So there's different ways that you can say, hey, I want ABC asset to go here. I also want this money to be distributed this way. I want it to be distributed a certain dollar amount forever. I want it to be, hey, if my son gets on drugs, he can't get anything for 6 months until he's clean. So there's a lot of different things you can do with it. So it matters because when you die, if you leave everything behind and it doesn't go through probate court, which is 99% of the problem with estate planning is avoiding probate court, if it doesn't go through probate, the kids still get the money, the grandkids, whoever, they can just go spend it, blow it, sell the assets. So estate planning can avoid all of that. So is there anything that I missed in that aspect?
No, I mean, bottom line is just establishing control in all these scenarios. There's a controlled plan, controlling your money, controlling how things are distributed, controlling the assets. And again, outside the court system, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, real quick, some famous cases. If you didn't know, Aretha Franklin, she's been passed for 7, 8 years. The argument within her estate planning is that she had two wills. They found one in 2010, and then in 2014, they found one crumpled up inside of the cushions of one of her couches. She died a couple years later, and they were just arguing, hey, the 2010 will benefited me more. Oh no, the 2014 will benefited me more. Well, after a while, they found out that it doesn't matter. It's the latest will. So the 2014 superseded will. Of course, the 2010 will. That family member that got more in that will got upset. So they banged heads and basically over time drained as much as they could out of her accounts. She wasn't worth a lot whenever she did pass away. But again, that could have been avoided if there was specific language within a trust or just, better planning with a will other than this is my will. I want ABC to go here. Prince, his whole estate was kind of a funny ordeal. He died, I believe, 7 years ago as well, something like that. He was worth, oh man, I don't even want to lie to you. So, okay, he died in 2016. He was worth a little bit over $200 million. So the issue with him is he had no will. There was a trust, but there was no will. So the trust just is a document saying the ABC, assets are owned by the trust, and then the beneficiaries, the kids, will receive the. Well, if there's no direction in the trust, it just sits there. So then what do? They argue. I get this, I get that, I get this much, I get that much. So there was a big ordeal there. Everyone's heard about Michael Jackson. What's happened to him, not only was his family really schemy and wanted as much as possible, but he also didn't pay taxes for a long time. So at the end of the day, it's been 2009, it's 16 years that he's basically been in this probate lawsuit, whatever you want to call it. And his tax bill has grown to about 700 million. And if they were to liquidate absolutely everything, it'd be 800 million. But they can't because they're still in court and everything is frozen. So again, even these famous people with all the money they have and all the people around them, all the higher ups, your best friend is worth $1 billion like Michael Jackson was. Doesn't matter if you don't have this proper estate planning set up. It's what your family goes through. And Chadwick Boseman, you might know him as the Black Panther. He was worth $2.3 million when he died, which is very surprising to me. He just must have spent a lot of money. When he died, he had nothing, no estate plan, no will, no trust. And his wife and his mom agreed that we'll split everything. And they both got $1.1 million. But because he didn't have the planning, it still took years, and it took on average, a 7% estate probate court cost. So if he's worth $3 million, 7% would be 210 grand. They would go towards court fees, lawyer fees, all the things associated with probate court. Then the Vanderbilt family, if you have no clue who that is, you probably know there's a college named after them. They were the wealthiest family in the world back in the 1900s, early 1900s. The Rockefellers weren't even on the map compared to how much money they had. The issue is all they had was an agreement, a will. This much assets goes to ABC son, ABC daughter, and that was it. But since there was no dictation, they spent it down. And then the next generation spent it down. And then after about 2 generations, they weren't even in the top 10 of the wealthiest families. Now they're probably worth a couple $1 billion, which is still a lot of money, but they were worth hundreds of billions of dollars adjusted for inflation back in the early 1900s. So they would be worth hundreds of trillions of dollars by now if they simply just had an estate plan. And key benefits, asset protection. So asset protection, it's kind of loose. If you're on social media and you hear asset protection, own nothing, control everything, it's kind of a joke. It's a lot of people are going to be in orange jumpsuits soon that are selling those dreams, but I'll just tell you, there is a certain level of asset protection with an RLT, revocable living trust, and then there's a lot more with an irrevocable trust. We can get into that later, but basically, a revocable living trust just changes the name. You know, if I want my trust to be ABC Copper Bottle Trust, who do they know? How do they know how to go find who owns that? Well, they can, and it doesn't really take a lot of effort. Most people might look at that and be like, man, it's not worth my time to go figure out who owns that asset to go sue them for that or whatever. That's the small level of asset protection you have with an RLT. Well, with an irrevocable trust, I give this bottle to a firm that runs my irrevocable trust. So I technically don't own that asset anymore. So the protection is if they sue me, I don't own it. I literally don't own it. I have no access to it. I can't sell it, but I can have a firm of fiduciaries manage that trust. And if I ask them, hey, I need this, or this, they can say, you know, maybe yes, maybe no. So the whole own nothing and control everything is kind of a joke. On the tax benefits, again, very little tax benefits on the RLT, but it does get you through probate court, which is 99% of the reason why you want a revocable living trust, at least in my opinion. Tax benefits on the irrevocable side, you know, you can set up a dynasty trust. It can last 300 years. It can last permanently. It can last multiple generations. That's how you get the tax benefits from it. But again, there's a lot of benefits in these trusts, and we're going to go over those pretty soon. But you have to realize that not all trusts are the same. There's multiple different types of trusts. There's multiple different types of benefits. As Dina said earlier, you can have two households that look identical, but the needs of the family, the needs of the next generation will completely dictate different trusts, different estate planning packages. So was there anything that I might have missed there that you'd like to touch on?
No, I mean, we're getting a little bit more into irrevocable trust soon. So no, nicely said.
This is all you.
Mm. Yes, revocable living trust, that's what we do. You know, it's a private contract that the client owns and controls. You are in control of this trust. The trust is not in control of you. Within the trust, it spells out, you know, that you're the owner and manager. It spells out the successor trustee who's going to distribute the assets to the beneficiaries when they die per whatever terms you say. Of course, it spells out the beneficiaries as well. We always put in a contingency plan with the trust. So there's a plan B if plan A doesn't, you know, go into effect. You know, it's going to spell out those directions, the instructions on how, you know, the beneficiaries are going to receive the trust assets. You can create that legacy where assets are distributed over a period of time. So in essence, the trust could live for years and years and years and years after you pass, especially if there's minor children and things like that. Guardianship can be part of the trust as well. Again, we totally customize this trust to make sure it fits all your needs, and we get to know a little bit about you so that we make sure that, like Dustin said, probate, of course, is a goal for everybody, But there's just so much more that this trust could do to enhance your estate planning. So we make sure that that language is incorporated and you understand, your options. And also a very important part of a trust is you can have the language perfectly spelled out and everything signed. It needs to be signed and notarized, everything properly signed and everything perfectly worded. But if it's not funded properly, literally this document is worthless. It's literally paper. So that's part of our, what we do with you is walk you through the entire process to make sure everything is funded, which means certain assets are repositioned properly within the trust. So the trust now owns the property or investment or is beneficiary of certain investments, changing life insurance potentially, the beneficiary to be the trust. Again, we walk through all of that to make sure everything is funded properly. Some things should not be put into the trust, like retirement accounts, because there can be tax impositions. All these are very important elements to getting the trust in place. So again, we walk through all this so there's no tax issues. All the language is in there perfectly, and we maximize the value that this can bring to your family. So, first and foremost, yes, avoid probate. And again, can really control like the distribution of how things are distributed to the beneficiaries.
If you were like me and you weren't raised with a lot of financial literacy and you're kind of ugga dugga, caveman like myself, basically what she's saying is your assets are left to a document. The document says where the assets go, how they can be accessed. And then on top of that, a quick freebie. If you didn't know, if you try to leave a life insurance death benefit to a child, they can't receive it. There will be a court appointed liaison that will handle that death benefit. So let's say you die with $1 million term, you and your spouse go down in a helicopter or whatever, and that's left behind to an 8-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. They can't technically access that money till they're 18, and if they need anything in the meantime, that court appointed liaison can say, okay, yeah, they need this for school. Okay, they need this for food. So with the trust, you can have the death benefit go to the trust and immediately let the kids have access to that death benefit. So that one thing alone, if I ever have a life insurance client that has a kid 17 or under, we're just immediately like, hey, you will not leave this to your kid. You can leave it to your spouse, that's fine. But what happens if you go on a vacation? Something happens. I'll leave this to you.
Okay. Yeah, our package comes, it comes with all these documents, which are all very important. The rule of thumb is you have a plan in place given anything that could occur in your life. Of course, death is guaranteed. But the power of attorney, healthcare directive, those are used if you're alive but incapacitated. Power of attorney is so someone can take care of your financial affairs if you're unable. If you don't have this in place, your family is going to have to go to court and get a court-appointed conservator, which is not pleasant and expensive. And the healthcare directive, same thing, where loved ones, whomever you designate, can work with doctors if you're unable. And the client actually goes through and makes choices about life support, donations of organs, all those beautiful things. In our package, there is what's called a pour over will that's in conjunction with the trust. Like a will without a trust is just a letter to a judge in court. That's all it is. With the trust, there is no court. But the will that's incorporated in our package is a pour over will that really swoops up some of the assets in the estate without having to reposition them. So all of that's important and needs to be part of the package to make sure everything doesn't cause complications.
So you would say the will is kind of like had the term, the trust is the main document. It's the shebang. The reason why you want the trust is to get away from probate and all that. But the will would just be like a contention plan of like, hey, I forgot to put this asset here, or I didn't think about this or think about that, right?
Nicely said.
Okay.
Exactly. And so it's not where you have to go put every single account into the trust. The pour of a will can pick some of those up. And I walk through that with the client. Each state, there's a different amount that the will can handle. So
Got
it's
it.
about 30, maybe to 50,000, except California is 190,000, but
Mm. And quick
Ish.
on the power of attorney, I've actually been through this before. Both of my grandpas were single whenever they started to fall apart, but they would not go to a home. And then they were so headstrong back then, you couldn't have got them to go. I don't think the police could have got him to go. But the power of attorney would have given us access over his accounts, over the property that he was in. So we could have done like a home equity line of credit to be able to help him to pay his bills. But instead, they lived to the point of poverty to the very end with a house falling apart around them because we couldn't have access to any of his money. But again, they weren't mentally there enough, the wherewithal to go to their accounts and put someone on their account.
Mhm.
And when you're out of groceries, we're basically delivering them groceries. So again, power of attorney doesn't seem like a big deal, but if you have a family member that starts to fall apart and you're not on their accounts, how are you going to take care of them? To me, that's huge.
Yeah, and well, we never advise putting anybody on your account because, in estate planning, you're trying to control your estate, right? And if someone is joint tenants, like a child, even if it's an adult child, you're exposing yourself to their liability. So if they got sued or divorced, now all of a sudden their estate is now part of yours. So it's kind of exposing their potential liabilities to yours if you put people joint on your accounts.
I'm glad you said that because we have the talk about simple versus complex trust all the time within my coaching group of, correct me if I'm wrong, because you'll know more about this than I will. A simple would be like a simple payment. Say the trust is worth $1 million and you dictate that, each kid gets $10,000 per year. That's a simple payment. It's going to their account. Well, if they get sued or they get divorced, technically that's part of their assets and they can have that split 50-50, or, they can go after that money. But if it's complex, you can go year to year and change their payments. Therefore, it's not really like a pension, so it's not under the same guidelines as the simple payment.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, that's huge. If you ever see movies where they're like, trust fund kids are mad because they don't get enough money, but if they get on drugs and don't have a job, they don't get any more money and now they're mad. And that's why, because they put a complex payment system in saying that if you don't at least work a part-time job, you don't get any money. If you don't
Yeah.
stay married, you don't get money. If you're on drugs, you don't get money. And that simple versus complex, which is something that probably 99% of people on this call have never heard of, that one little thing is worth its weight in gold for, 1,600 bucks in a revocable living trust package. And then the irrevocable trust. This is where all the social media gurus will be put in jail soon for trying to say this does more than it does, but I'll kind of let you touch on the irrevocable trust side.
Yeah, well, we do all types of trust, irrevocable as well. We don't do any illegal or unethical irrevocable trust, like people call me about Cayman Island trust and that kind of thing. No, but we do irrevocable. It's probably 3 to 5% of our business at most. It does have advantages for some, but like Dustin was saying, it really is for a more advanced, sophisticated type of client that's got a lot of money or a lot of huge liability issues. You are relinquishing control and management of your money, which turns a lot of people off. In some ways, we can commingle the revocable trust with LLCs to get a little bit of both the best worlds where you're still in control. But yes, for some people, the irrevocable is trust. There's all different types. We've got the asset protection irrevocable trust. We've got even like the Medicaid irrevocable trust. So if, someone's concerned about going on, government assistance for long-term care, we can do those. We have special needs trust, which we actually do a lot of. And those are for anyone, a beneficiary that's on SSI, so they don't get kicked off their benefits. Those aren't very expensive. Those are sub trusts to the revocable trust. We do a ton of those, but they are irrevocable. And we do ILITs, irrevocable life insurance trusts. Those are for more, again, people that have estate tax issues. Right now, the 2025 federal estate tax exemption is 13.9 million. If you had above that, there are sub trusts that can be added to the revocable trust to help, with those estate tax issues for higher estates. So there's all different types of irrevocable trust for different reasons. And we do them as long as they're ethical and legal. Absolutely. I have gotten a few requests that we had to say no to, because there is a lot of talk on social media that just is not true. So, yes.
I had a client that wanted a trust, and before I sent them to you, I asked a few more questions, and I was like, nope, not sending them over. So he made like
Yeah.
$60,000 a year, and he's like, I want a Cayman Islands trust with a Nevis LLC tied to it, so I never have to pay taxes again. I'm like, okay, cool. Do you know how much that's going to cost? No, no, man. I mean, the cheapest I've ever seen, what you just said, about $40,000. You didn't pay that in taxes in the last 7 years combined. So do you want to go ahead and
Right.
move forward? And they just kind of like bit their tongue in half. And it's just like, I mean, that's just how it is. So
Yeah.
on the, you said something about estate tax. So I'm not sure if many people will have family members or themselves will fall into this, but just know if you're married, the $14 million exemption right now is 28 per couple. So if you're worth over $28 million as a couple, when you pass away, pretty much every dollar above that's going to be taxed at about 40%. So if you die, you're worth 50 million bucks, 28 is not taxed, 22 is taxed at 40%. So whenever your family goes to inherit the money, they have to pay $10 million in tax just to get that money. The ILET is good for the life insurance. So like let's say even though life insurance is tax free, if you are worth $28 million when you die, but you have a $10 million life insurance policy, that's added to your estate. So technically, your estate's 38 million. Technically, you have to pay 40% tax on that tax-free life insurance. So with the irrevocable life insurance trust, you can have it be the beneficiary. It's out of your estate and it's not added to that exemption. So the good thing is, no matter which political party you're part of, with Trump being back in office, he's planning on extending the tax cuts. They were supposed to drop down to like $7 million per person, so 14 million as a couple. So we keep that double estate taxes exemption right now. And then one more thing before we go to the next slide. You brought something up that's a big, I'd say about 10% of my clients come across this and they ask me questions about it. So whenever you talk about like a Medicaid trust, just for a typical person that's like 65 years old and the kids 40, 50 years old are like, mom and dad's not looking too good. They're starting to lose it a little bit. When would you say that they need to start looking into that Medicaid trust to avoid things like, their long-term care taking all their assets and such?
Well, it has to be in place 5 years before you qualify. So that's a disadvantage. There's a look back period, a gifting look back period. So it has to be in place for 5 years. So the asset protection trust has to be in place 1 year. Say you were thinking you were going to be sued tomorrow and you want to do a irrevocable asset protection trust, the judge wouldn't even consider it unless it was in place at least a year. The same thing with the Medicaid. There's a look back period, has to be in place for 5 years. So if you ever have a client that's interested, we can educate that client on their options. So a lot of these people might find it an option once they learn the truths about it, and some might all of a sudden become uninterested. I mean, there might be other better methods of long-term care planning than the Medicaid trust, but it could be an option for them too. So we can help educate them on it. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so next steps, this is the final slide. If you see this QR code here, the QR code is a Calendly link directed straight towards Dina. If you want to book an appointment with her and meet up about any kind of estate planning, you can read the slide if you want to. We'd kind of hand it over to Dina for last comments.
Yeah, our goal for the client is to walk, well, we're full service. So we walk the client through the entire process from beginning to end. I fill out a questionnaire. A lot of clients do ask me, I've been doing this long enough that I know one of my biggest hurdles in this business, just like it is in insurance, is procrastination. So if someone asks me, what do I need to prepare for this meeting? I say nothing, because it also is different for each person. So what I do is I'll go through a questionnaire and just gather the information we can, and then I'll send them a follow-up email with a list of to-dos of anything I need from them or any decisions I've asked that they've never considered, which happens a lot. So then we get that questionnaire filled out. And as soon as we have everything that we need, all the information we need, we ship the trust. And then we have another long 1 hour meeting, not long, it's a 1 hour meeting just to review the trust, make sure the language is perfect, and walk them through that most important step of funding and positioning the assets properly into the trust. I walk them through all of that. So we do it in a nice, like within a month, and we walk the client through everything. So it's nice and simple and clear because it's essential it's set up properly or it's literally worthless.
Mm.
So we
Glad you
make it
said that.
affordable.
Glad you said that. Well, I hate to say it, but if you don't know what a QR code is, I have to say this towards the end. Pull out the camera on your phone, put the QR code in your screen. It'll pop up the website address, and you can go on there and book that appointment. As you said, first call is just fact finding. Once the trust is actually built, you'll have the second call to go over how it works, answer all your questions. Besides that, appreciate you being on the call and look forward to you guys joining the next webinars.
Thank you.